Welcome to Mastering the Moment, a series of 10-minute self-improvement podcast recordings to provide actionable insights to respond to life's challenges. My name is Heidi Addick. I'm a coach, trainer, and consultant here at DuPont International in Hong Kong. This episode of Mastering the Moment, we're focusing on getting feedback right. These days, a lot of companies approach us about training on how to give feedback. And more, we see that people are afraid of sharing what they really think, of giving feedback. Part of that is getting it right. How do you give feedback without upsetting the other person? How can you be more sensitive and also be constructive in that feedback at a time in the world where everybody has their own opinion and there are flare-ups and conflicts that come out of having polar opposite views? It can be difficult to give feedback in a way that actually has impact. So how do you give feedback without upsetting the other person? I have a checklist here. First of all, have the right intention, have the good intention that is for the other person. It's not about you, it's about helping them. Second, include context. The person needs to have a reference point to know where you're coming from. What are you seeing that they don't have an awareness of? Third, what is the impact of their action or behavior? Or what's the potential problem? Why are you bringing this up in the first place? And then fourth, you need to show consideration for their side, for their stance, their perspective. Let's look at this with an example. I'm going to talk about a friend of mine. When she started working for her boss many years ago, she observed him trying to give out lychee, that's the lucky red packets, at Chinese New Year. She noticed that he was just giving it out and he didn't really understand the customs and traditions, who you're supposed to give it to and what you're supposed to do. She gave him feedback. She guided him on those customs, and he received that feedback very positively because she had his best intentions in mind. She was looking out for him. So it seemed like almost altruistic behavior, altruistic feedback. So that worked out really well. And that was the start of a long relationship. However, if we look at later on in her career, she was trying to get more opportunities and improve her skill set. She felt kind of limited and wanted to transfer out of her position. So she tried to give feedback to her boss again. This time it wasn't positively received. I mean, I think he had his own personal gain in mind. He didn't want to lose her, but I guess the feedback wasn't received in the right way. The same person, the same players in the conversation, but two very different outcomes. So we can see how having the right intentions, giving the right kind of consideration can have the right effect in terms of giving feedback. So let's imagine that somebody says to you, "You never listen to me and you're only focused on your own interests." How would you feel if you heard that? Probably would have a defensive reaction. How can you say that? What do you mean? What is missing in this feedback? Well, we need to include context. Give a sense of where that feedback is coming from. If we can describe the behavior that gave the feeling of not being listened to, then it'll be easier for that person to receive that feedback, to know, what are you talking about? They have a context, a reference point. What made you think that? Let's go back to that situation then. If they said, "Whenever I'm speaking to you in the evening, you seem to be distracted because you're looking at the TV. And I get the sense that you're not listening to me. But when I try to go away, you start talking to me again. And that gives me a feeling that you only want to talk about what you're interested in." So with this modification of the feedback, we have context, we have the scenario in which the behavior is being observed, we have a description of the behavior how it's happening. And we also have a description of the feelings or the impression that that behavior made. So having context and a reference point makes feedback more tangible. It's something that the receiver can grasp. The next question might be, so what? So what if that behavior makes you feel that way? What would motivate the receiver to change or to respond to that feedback? We need to use a bit of influencing skills. Discuss the impact of that behavior so that the person receiving the feedback can understand, why is it a problem? What's the potential danger or the problem that it creates? So let's take an example. A peer, another manager, wants to speak to his colleague about how he communicates to the team in their open office environment. So he may take him aside to a meeting room or somewhere informal outside of the office, and he could say something like, I noticed you speaking to your team member this morning. When you spoke to your team member, it was rather loud, and it felt like you might have been losing your temper. I noticed that the whole office was very quiet after that moment. And I think that by speaking loudly to your team member, it may have created a very tense situation in our open office environment. I'm concerned that you're giving an impression that you were angry when I know you just have a tendency of speaking loudly. It's just how you speak. Unfortunately, it draws a lot of attention from our colleagues. So maybe it would be a good idea to try to take your team discussions to a separate meeting room or try to lower your voice. So let's analyze that dialogue just now. The feedback was structured by describing the behavior, describing what the person did and what was the outcome of that behavior, the impression that it made. It also described the potential impact or the problem. And notice it's a potential impact. So we're not saying it did cause a problem, but we are saying that it has a potential to be a problem. Using words like I'm concerned also is including that good intention that you're looking out for that person. And it also demonstrates a balanced perspective by recognizing the person that you're giving feedback to, their communication style, that they tended to be loud, and the challenge of their open office environment. So to summarize, getting feedback right, first of all, speak up. Speak up in the first place. Be brave and hold the right intention, a good intention. It can help to write the feedback down. It helps you to structure your points. Even though you write it down, make sure you give that feedback verbally, whether it's on the phone or face to face. That just allows a higher chance for that feedback to be received in a good way because you're allowing for a two-way dialogue. So it's giving consideration for the other person's perspective. If you send it in writing, it doesn't give that dialogue opportunity. There's also the added bonus of making sure that the person changes their behavior, because if you are giving it verbally, then you can ask for their response. And if the person responds with what they intend to do, then this verifies that the feedback has been received. Remember that even if your feedback is well-meaning, defensive reactions are normal. It's normal for us to react in a sense of threat state, feeling offended in some way because of somebody telling you something that maybe you didn't realize or interrupting your own thinking about how you've been performing or being perceived. So don't push. Offer suggestion. It can help to say something along the lines of what has helped me, right? So that way you're offering something from your own experience. No matter what, just remember, it's always better to offer a solution rather than just complain. That was our episode on getting feedback right. Stay tuned for our next episode in our Mastering the Moment series, where we talk about decisions about people. If you have a story or a case to share, or if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.